People always talk about what normal is, what normal should feel like, what it should sound like, what it should look like. The parameters an individual has to follow in order to fit in with society's one and only paradigm. This is our truth, they say. This is the way that you do things, because it is our way of doing things. The rules are to be obeyed. There will be consequences if you do not hold up compliance. That is how these people talk, these government officials, the leaders of our world. I know for a fact the one can't live with that over their head, that it can drive them insane. Each of us as an individual has our own unique look on life and the events that happen to us, no matter what those people say. If an experience happens to a person in which the purpose of conforming to the system is not an option, they should embrace it. And if they tell the world of their tale, they should get credited for their find and the fact that they now have a different angle on the way the human eye sees things. But instead they get accused of lies, told that what they saw was nothing more than a trick of the lights or their mind bending the rules, told that they are going insane, told that something else must have happened. They couldn't have possibly seen anything out of the ordinary. And the sad thing is, after enough of this lecturing, after enough of this brainwashing, the individual starts to believe what they are saying. They start to believe that what the experience brought them was nothing more than another notch of fiction in the great journey of our lifetime. They begin to believe that they are the ones in the wrong. You may be questioning why I know this, why I'm telling you all these things. What are my reasons? What am I going to gain by giving you this information? The truth is, I don't want to gain anything. I'm not in this for profit or fame or recognition. I simply wanted to give my thoughts on what stories out of the norm can turn into, and who does that turning. I wanted to get those thoughts off my chest, get the truth off my chest, because for so many years now, I have been labeled as one of the possible murderers for a crime I did not commit. I'm saying these things so that when you hear this story, you will not be influenced by what the men in charge want you to think. The tale I'm about to tell you is 100% genuine, and that whatever you are told, this did happen the way I'm about to describe, and any who say different are wrong. It happened when I was 16, just a kid going to high school. I wasn't one of those guys to be on the football team, or the ones to go for the girls who I knew were out of my league, although I wasn't one of those kids that everyone picked on either. I was just your normal kid, not too shy but not too confident. I hung out with the people that did what they wanted to do and didn't let anybody stop them. It was a life I chose, and it was a life I enjoyed, the life I still enjoy. I had 3 close friends, and they too, like me, witnessed this. I must be truthful about who was there and their involvement in the events that happened. However, in writing this down, I have decided to keep their names withheld from whatever audience may be captivated by this story. I know that they would want their real identities confidential because, like me, they have a hard time accepting what happened, and nobody will believe them. The night of the first day of summer break, 1993, my friends and I had spent the day hanging around the main streets of the town, just walking around, seeing what kind of stuff we could get up to in the seemingly endless amounts of time we now had. We had lunch, checked out some of the stores around town, ran into some attractive girls that we tried our best to hit on. We even had a quick look in the comic book store, checked out what kind of new editions of Marvel and DC the owner had ordered in for that summer. Despite all of this, however, my friends and I knew that the real fun would unravel itself once the sun decided to disappear below the horizon. The real fun would happen once the night befell our little town. Only this night, the fun that we had come to know and love would never show itself. It had reached the hour of 9 p.m., and the four of us had decided to go for a walk in the forest. Sherbrooke was its name. It was located in a local national park in which people were allowed to enter at will. Walking paths had been made through the trees, stairs had been installed where the ground got too steep to simply walk up, and various maps of the area had even been placed in a glass display at certain points in the park, creating makeshift checkpoints, acting as a marker if an individual didn't know where he or she was. They could be reassured by finding their geographic location quickly and calmly. In all, it seemed unlikely that danger would be present to anyone who found themselves in the park. But that was not the case for us that night. The four of us were not safe, and danger was just around the corner, just waiting to strike. We had started our journey walking down the dirt path that led to the forest. We had already passed the first map near the entrance, and knew that we wouldn't be seeing another until we got well into the trees. But that was okay. We'd been there so many times at that point that we practically knew the way around like the back of our hand. We could have made the journey with our eyes closed if we were so inclined, which ironically almost seemed to be the case, as there was no light but the beams coming from the 4 flashlights we carried. Eventually though, we did reach the second map, and with it, we decided to take the second of 3 paths that had been built into the army of trees. It wasn't a big deal. Again, we had been down the path so many times before and pretty much knew every detail of where we were heading. We knew that towards the end of the path, it opened up onto a clearing, and we knew that by the time we reached that area, we would be exactly 3.5 miles from the entrance. Not too far, but not exactly the shortest of journeys back either. Nevertheless, we were all between the ages of 16 and 18, and as far as we were concerned, nothing was going to stop us doing what we wanted to do. So, what exactly are we going to do when we get to the clearing? It was John who had spoken up, breaking the 2-minute silence that had been going on since we left the checkpoint. Who knows? Maybe we'll get there and just decide to head back, Nick had responded, simply looking ahead into the light beam as he spoke. We are going to walk all the way to the clearing just to turn around and head back. To me, that sounds like a waste of time.
Well, it's better than sitting at home having our parents tell us what to do.
It was me who spoke this time. However, the conversation would go no further. The event happened after that sentence. The world, as we knew it, changed forever. We had no idea that it was going to happen. No idea that the events to follow would scar us for the rest of our lives. No idea that one of us was about to die. We walked a few more steps forward, starting to laugh to ourselves with a mutual understanding that the statement I had made was nothing but true, and that, at that time in our lives, the typical thing for us to do was to do as little as possible, especially if the request came from our parents. Upon hearing the sound of what we all recognized to be a growl, we stopped laughing immediately. Our footsteps halted, and the atmosphere of conversation changed into that of part fear, part curiosity as to what exactly it was that had made the sound. Okay, am I crazy, or did we all just hear what was clearly an audible growl? Michael was the first to break the silence, his voice slightly cracking as the words escaped his throat and made their way out of his mouth. Nope, that was definitely some kind of animal growl. Do you know if any kind of predatory animal lives in the forest? I don't particularly feel like getting eaten alive in the dark because some wild feline happened to be hungry. I never thought there was, but it seems that we're all wrong in thinking that we would be safe if we came out here during the night. But we've been out here during the night loads of times, and we've never seen or heard anything before. Well, maybe tonight is different. Maybe tonight is the night that nature decided it was time for us to run for our lives. Although it was clearly an argument between Nick and Michael, at that moment I decided to add my 2 cents worth. Being frightened, trying to listen to the forest around me, and also being distracted by voices was not a good way to be at that moment.
Will you two shut up? I'm trying to listen.
To my surprise, they shut their mouths immediately, although that was not the thing that was in the forefront of my mind in that moment. With the silence once again present, I listened in as best as I could, waiting for the slightest sound, the slightest indicator that something was alive in the trees around us, and that it wasn't just our imaginations making the sound out to be more than it was. I listened, and I listened, and just when I thought that the growl would never again rear its head, it made itself known again. This time it sounded louder, angrier, as if the creature it belonged to knew we were listening in for it. It could smell out our fear and would take the first opportunity it had to prey on the emotion.
Okay. Growl number 2. I think that usually means you aren't hearing things, right? Or is that 3rd time lucky? Who cares really, I suppose? Guys, I think we should get out of here.
I turned to the others as I said this, shining my light onto their terrified faces. By the looks on those faces, there were no arguments on whether my statement was right or not. Slowly, the 3 of them turned around, and at the same time, we all began the walk back to the entrance gate, going as fast as we could, but at the same time, not wanting our footsteps to be heard by whatever was in the trees. Walking slow didn't do us any good. After only a few steps, we heard a rustling off to our left and another growl. That was when the creature had decided to pounce. It was the predator, and we were the prey. It came out of the bushes to the left of us, the torches we held lighting up nothing but a blur of gray and black. It happened so suddenly, I didn't even have the time to react. I didn't jump, I didn't gasp. Nothing. I stood there, feeling nothing but a numb sense of dread. And before I knew it, it was gone again. There was nothing in the beams but the dirt path in front of us. I wasn't even the one to notice that Nick was no longer with us, no longer standing an eye-shot of us. He was simply gone, snatched away into the night as if he was erased from time itself. Guys, where is Nick? It was Michael who broke the terrified silence, and upon hearing these words, we all started to look around, searching the area. Where the hell is Nick? Where is he? His voice had turned to nothing more than a frightened whisper. None of us could answer the question, and he was about to ask it one more time, his body now visibly shaking, when a scream echoed out across the forest. None of us spoke, none of us moved, none of us even breathed. It seemed like forever we stood there, listening in, scared out of our minds. And just when it seemed like the remaining 3 of us would never make a sound again, there was another growl, this time slower, sounding almost as if the creature was toying with us, knowing we were afraid, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.
We have to go. We have to go now.
I was finally able to speak. I meant it to come out as a scream, but instead it was more of a gasp of words. But what about Nick? John asked the question this time.
I don't think...
I swallowed before continuing my sentence.
I don't think Nick is alive anymore.
What do we do? Where do we... He was cut off by another growl. This time it was closer, sounding as if the creature was mere meters from us.
Run!
I commanded this time, immediately turning and running towards the entrance gate. I didn't dare to look back to see if the others were following, and I soon discovered that I didn't have to. The sound of Michael and John running behind me could be heard within seconds of me taking off. However, the growls were also there, as well as a heavy sound of large paws imprinting in the ground, and they sounded as though they were gaining on us fast. There was nothing we could do. Nothing would stop the creature from killing us all. In less than a minute, the three of us would be its second meal for the night. We ran for our lives, pushing our legs faster than we knew they could ever move. It made no difference, however, and before we knew it, the creature had seemed to jump into the air, sailing over our heads, landing on 4 paws, its yellow teeth bared, and its red eyes staring at us with hungry lust. The three of us stopped dead, frightened to death, staring at its eyes as it stared back into ours. To me, it looked as though it was some kind of wolf creature, only much more evil and with a larger head, almost twice the size you would find on a normal 4-legged animal. Looking back now, there was only really one way I can accurately represent the appearance of it. It looked like a werewolf. As we stared at it, we realized that this was it. These precious seconds would be our final time on the earth. The creature would strike at any second, and from that point onwards, our bodies would be nothing more than leftover pieces of flesh, bone, and blood. The creature would feast on us, and after it was done, it would move on, walking back into the forest and preparing for the next unfortunate people who happen to make their way into the park. What do we do, man? What the hell do we do? It was the voice of Michael behind me. I wish I knew the answer to his question, but I didn't. The only thing I knew was that I was waiting for the point in which it would jump forward. I just hoped that the death would be quick, over in seconds, so it wouldn't be a prolonged pain. I didn't want to bleed out for hours and die lonely, cold, and almost within range of civilization because I had somehow managed to drag myself the amount of distance needed to reach the gate.
I don't know. Just don't make any sudden movements. We don't want to piss it off.
I'm pretty sure it's already pissed off. His voice was a frightened mess. He's dead. He's freaking dead, man. He started to cry, and while I was looking at the werewolf, I could hear him sobbing and sniffing, trying his best to keep his sanity intact while his mind processed what had just gone on in the last 5 minutes of his life, what we all knew had happened to our friend. I didn't blame him either. I would be breaking down. I would be on my knees and tears running down my face, but the adrenaline was keeping me numb. The creature was straight in front of me, and the fear of the predatory instinct it had developing further was the main point in the forefront of my mind. The next words Michael spoke were nothing but a series of inaudible noises in my mind as I focused, desperately trying to work out a way to get out of this, a way to get past without it using the opportunity to strike. It didn't seem like there was a way out. Everything that I considered doing either ended in the werewolf attacking us, or the inevitable possibility that we would be trapped. Given the way it had jumped over our heads, I wouldn't rule out that even if we did run, we would eventually just end up in the same position as we were then, helpless and facing it head on. And as we all know, once all possibilities are ruled out, that only leaves one option: nothing. Nothing can be done. Nothing will change the outcome. It will play out as destiny intended it. And upon that realization, the three of us stared into the eyes of the creature, watching as it slowly advanced towards us. It was like watching numbers count down. When they reached 0, the only thing that would be seen was blackness. But just when the moment came that I thought it would pounce, something suddenly happened that I didn't think was possible. The creature was pushed off its feet, thrown into the trees by yet another blur. It happened too fast for any of us to comprehend, but as we looked over, we saw that there were now 2 creatures, 2 werewolves. The thing had been pushed off the path by one of its own kind. It was then that we ran. We took the opportunity, getting out of there before we had a chance to be trapped again. We knew that if those things had stopped fighting and noticed us, still standing there as observers, it would be the last thing that any of us would ever do or see. We ran for what seemed like forever, the muscles in our legs burning, the breath in our lungs barely able to power the physical demand required to keep up the action. But we ignored that fact, ignored it as we ran back through the forest, ignored it as we passed through the gate that led to the park, and when at last we stopped running, we didn't even realize that we were a mile or so from the park itself. At that point, we all collapsed, glad that we had got away. However, coming to the realization we had lost one of our friends, one of the people we had grown up with, coming to terms with the way he had probably been slaughtered, torn apart as if he were nothing, we began to cry, to sob, thinking about what we were going to do, how we were going to tell his parents, thinking about what would happen to us if nobody believed us. Who would we turn to? What was going to happen in the coming days? But most of all, we cried because we didn't know whether he had first suffered or whether it had been a quick death. We all hoped that it was as quick and painless as it could possibly be. At this point, you may be questioning why I have told you this story, asking me why I should write it down and submit it in the format I have. For those people, I have one simple answer. Because I needed to. After all these years of ridicule, after all these years of being accused by those who don't believe that what my friends and I told was nothing but a lie to cover the real truth of how our friend died, to the police who endlessly questioned us, threatened us with our arrests, and an unknown number of years locked up in a room with metal bars for windows, and to the parents of Nick who were never the same after we came back that night. This story is for all of them. This story is a gift from all three of us, Michael, John, and I. A gift containing nothing but the truth. From the bottom of our hearts, we are sorry. Sorry for going into the forest that night. Sorry that we were stupid teenagers who didn't want to listen to their parents. Sorry that Nick died and his body was never found. People always talk about what normal is, what normal should feel like, what it should look like, the parameters an individual has to follow in order to fit in with society's one and only paradigm. Except they don't take into account the people who see the unknown, the people who know they saw something different, the people who know they saw something abnormal. They don't take into account that sometimes nightmares are real, and the things in those nightmares live all around us, and that in the great game between good and evil, sometimes the nightmares win.